Good day. Welcome to this session on energy efficiency as related to air conditioning equipment. Air conditioning equipment is, in a very small way, to be described as a power guzzler. It is a very well known fact that in an office building, more than 50% of the energy taken by it is consumed by the air conditioner. So it is very, very necessary to be able to look at the efficiency of this power consumption. Ideally, if you look at a green building technologist, you would say, look, we should have something which is zero energy absorbent. Now that's not possible. So we try to play around and say, look, we absorb energy, but keep it to a minimum and try to generate enough to be able to offset its requirement. Now, we don't question that logic at this platform. We leave this as it is and move forward. Energy, as one would look at, is basically a very, very basic concept. You get up at home, go to another room, near the door you have a switch, you switched off your light. So what did you do? You saved energy. It is something which has been brought up into our nature. We are frugal by our upbringing. I know of some very, very, very big people who are absolutely down to earth in this aspect. And I know of an equally number of large people who perhaps have quietly forgotten this aspect of being personally involved, being personally responsible for our own personal consumptions. People sometimes may not forget, but sometimes perhaps even are not aware that they've left a TV set on, that they've left a light on. Now, this is not the best way to look at energy efficiency. As I said, it was always in our nature to be frugal, but somewhere down the line we forgot. Let's go back and make sure that those basic aspects are always at the foundation of whatever we are going to talk about today. Let's start at the very beginning. It's always the best place to start. As Julie Andrews told you in her movie, which was a bestseller, Sound of Music, when she said, let's start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. Now, when did energy consciousness become a requirement? Or when did people start looking upon it as a requirement? It was left to a person like Saddam Hussein when he started questioning oil pricing, when he started questioning oil acquisition, and when he started putting a squeeze on oil, that people realized that they were dealing with something which was not only limited but expensive. So at that point of time, awareness to energy became important. Oil barrel prices went up from $40 to $120 per barrel. This was a disaster. At that point of time, bills started rocketing. People became suddenly aware that it was not only at the community level that efficiencies were important, but it was also at the personal level that things had to be looking up. In the broader aspect of a community, one would look at energy from a very, very large scale. At a small personal aspect, one would look at a macro limit. Now, you are aware, as I said, of a switching off of a light when you go out of the room. You are aware of not wasting water because it will help you to reduce the pump time in your home. But many of us are not aware that energy is required for a lot of other things which we don't see of. For instance, today most of our agriculture is done by pumped water. So that pump which consumes water, that harvester which collects the grain, the power that is consumed by downstream processing of the grain into bread, into anything that you consume, has started becoming important. The community starts looking at it at the community level, and you and I start looking at it at the personal level. As I mentioned, the awareness of this, we've got to thank Saddam Hussein for it. Now, having talked of this, let us say, we talked of energy as sun, water coming out, required to finish products like bread, textiles, anything. Now, that is something which we will not look at in this session because of the limited time availability. What we will look at is basically what is going on to the personal level, and more important, into what is going on into our air conditioning equipment. From the angle of conservation, the moment you start this exercise, you have really got to know what you're handling, where did it come from, and where does it go. In an air conditioner, schematically, the air conditioner would be like what you see on your screen. It will be basically an enclosure, which is again a primary need for any air conditioning. I have set out in this sketch a window air conditioner because that's the basic form of air conditioning. Now, what does that air conditioner look like? Its insides have been portrayed here. It has a cooling end, it has a heating end. The cooling end is powered by a fan to dissipate the cold air into the air conditioning. The hot end is powered again by another fan which rejects the heat, and to make the heat move from one to the other, you have the compressor. So the three red clouds that you see are the energy sinks. Now, if you step away from the window air conditioner, look at a little bigger machine. What would you see? You would still see something which is inside the room, which absorbs the heat. How? By having a cooling coil inside. So in other words, if you notice on your screen, you see an air conditioner portrayed as a fan and a coil. The coil draws cooling energy from the outside from a water chilling equipment, which again generates the cooling or removes the heat and keeps on recirculating it through this cooling coil. So basically, if you look at again equipment, whether it was the window air conditioner or whether it was this kind of a more complex, I would call it a central plant, you see equipment like condenser fans, you see equipment like compressors, you see equipment like chiller pumps, and you see equipment like AHU fans which consume energy. Now, with this slide, we are aware of the equipment that we need to look at for tackling energy conservation. The first step to being able to tackle this conservation is to know what is the kind of relative energy absorbed by each of those three components that we talked of. Basically, the fan might be said to say take away 20% of the energy of an air conditioner. The pump takes away a good 10%. The compressor, which is really responsible for shifting the energy, that is shifting the heat from the inside to the outside, takes about 70% of the heat, and the total 100% is made up of these three block forms of energy consumption. Now that we've identified these sources, we know that the components required are a fan, pump, and a compressor. How do we go about reducing the energy absorbed by these equipment? There is the most basic factor, conservation distant from these equipment. Now you bought this equipment, you never made this equipment. There is associated with this equipment a manufacturer sitting far away. Now he is the one who can be definitely a person who will look at energy conservation of this, but it is something which will not be of importance to this lecture that we are looking at today. It is basically because something that you will not be able to control. At best, you will be able to tell a manufacturer, look, your compressor is consuming a little more energy, it should be consuming a little less energy, but doing something for it will not be within your ken. It will be at the manufacturer's level. So in other words, a manufacturer's obligation to do the best for his equipment is not within the scope of our talks today, and it is assumed that this level of communication has been established. It is assumed that this activity has taken place and that you have got the best equipment that money can buy. 5-star rated BEE is already working for you. Now, once you have this, then the ball of energy efficiency affection is entirely in your court. You've got a good equipment. Whatever to be done far away has been done. Society has done its best. It has given you the best equipment that it can make. Now, you can improve upon its energy efficiency further by a very simple exercise like this. What you see on the side is 3 items A, B, C which are listed. Now one is you could change your personal preference. For instance, ASHRAE has listed that you require 24 degrees centigrade as the room temperature. But it is not unknown for people to become comfortable at 26 degrees. Between the two, by changing the set points of the temperature, your energy absorption of the equipment comes down, because 40 to 24 would have been a big dip, 40 to 26 is a lesser dip. This air conditioner will consume less energy entirely due to your being able to acclimatize your body to 26 degrees. Either by physically opening a couple of buttons, making yourself more attuned with the nature with the ambient you are working in, various aspects. Now those are personal preferences which can be used to look at energy efficiency in a very objective manner. You could also reduce the space. For instance, now supposing we have a classroom which we know is going to be occupied only by 10 people. Where is the logic in making it 70 feet by 70 feet and air conditioning the whole thing? We might as well have a divider partition, make it into 2 classrooms, have one classroom working for a smaller group of 10 people, open up the partition, use it for bigger group. Now that again is something which you can do personally. It is regardless of the manufacturer giving you the best equipment. So you change personal temperatures, you minimize the environment. Now these are things which are open to you to do. They are very live potentials for saving energy and using the equipment also frugally. As I said, we started off by saying switch it off when you don't want. So in other words, if I were to sort of put what I talked about into a scientific parlance, you might see those yellow points on your slide. One is proper control, whether it is on off, whether it is reset and all. So it is basically what? It is proper control. If you control your equipment properly, yes, you can save energy. Likewise, you reset the equipments, acclimatize yourself to higher temperatures, work limited hours. At night, put it on a timer so that 2 hours when your ambient temperature is low, your equipment doesn't work, you won't even know about it. So those are items that you look at on a personal level. The most critical final item is always never assume that you've got the best equipment. Keep on looking at its nameplate details, keep on looking at the papers, and any time you feel that there is a big dip between what is available and what you have, do not hesitate to retire the equipment. I'm not talking of retiring me. Look, I'm very old. Nobody has retired me. But if you have equipment when just very old, don't hesitate to say goodbye to it and put in energy efficient equipment. Now again, digressing on those points that we had talked of, the simplest form of energy, even today with all the BMS, with all the complex controls that one can think of, is basically an on-off control. It is not unusual to go into an office building which starts at 10 o'clock to find that the air conditioning has been put on at 9 o'clock. Why? Because somebody had forgotten to put on the timer to say that it should be 9 o'clock in summer, and in off-peak times in winter it can be 9:30. The pull-down load is smaller during winter. So on-off times, if they are affected properly and if they are affected automatically, they can really be a lot of energy saving. I am aware of a building which had 10 floors, very good equipment, but relied upon a mechanic to go and switch on and off the equipment. So he was told at 5 o'clock the office closes, run your equipment up to 5:30. Mind you, in a good office, the air conditioning doesn't stop before you leave. The air conditioning must stop after you leave. So he was told at 5:30 you start switching off he was told to switch off the plant. Now being a single person alone without any automation, he would go to the top floor, switch off the air handling unit, come down by the steps, go into the next air handling unit, switched off. The entire process of switching off these 10 floors, 10 things would take him 10 minutes. This entire operation of 10 minutes was translated back into the time. The lowest equipment was kept running for 10 minutes longer than was necessary. So when you translated it into facts, it was found that it was far, far cheaper to put in an automatic electric timer, which at the stroke of 5:30 would switch off everything. The timer cost was a few thousand rupees, and the saving in terms of energy cost was a few tens of thousands of rupees. Now these are very simple facts. They look laughable material, but they are really the truth. So an on-off control is one of the easiest, most sensible ways of effecting energy even today with all the high tech available. Now this on-off need not be an on-off switch. It need not be that a mechanic has to go to the 10th floor. This on-off can be based on temperature. This on-off can be based on, let us say, you've got fresh air coming in. It was meant to dilute. So you put a CO2 sensor on it. The CO2 sensor will say, I can switch off this element of fresh air because my air is now absolutely clean. So this on-off vocabulary can be extended to say not just physical on-off switch. It can be extended to say something like the control parameter. For ventilation, it can be a CO2 sensor. For thermal, it can be a thermostat. It can be a humidistat where humidity is to be controlled. So on-off control, please never look upon it as something which is very basic. It is something which still can save you a tremendous amount of money. Now, this is when you look at a big picture. When you look at, let us say, a thermostat for controlling a particular dedicated equipment. Now, if you look at the component downstream, you will find that with the help of an air conditioning technician, you will be able to not only fine tune the operation of the entire AC system, but you will be able to fine tune a lot of component working within the system, which can be cut off when they are redundant, which can be brought on only on a need based strategy. Such things which are basically, one would say from the common sense, present a tremendous potential for saving of energy. Now that was as far as the on-off control was concerned. The second best step to doing conservation is by resetting your controls. Now resetting controls, as you will see from this slide, is possible and necessary from two parameters. One is, look deeper into the design features of an AC system. When I am asked to design an AC system, I look at the mean maximum temperature. Working from Chennai, I said, look, my air conditioning system must be able to handle 39 degrees dry bulb, 28 degree wet bulb ambient, and it should maintain a condition of 24 inside. When does this happen? This happens perhaps for only an hour on a hot summer afternoon. On that same hot day, May 21st, 4 p.m, the heat was the maximum. But if I look at 8 p.m, the heat was never the maximum. It has come down perhaps by 25%. Likewise, early morning on that same hot day, the heat would be even lower. So the 100% equipment that we select for air conditioning is always for the peak load. And most of the times we work at off-peak times. For instance, that even in Chennai, if I were to look at my electricity bill, I notice with awe that in summer, the May bill is something like maybe 2.5 times to 3 times the bill that I get in December. Now this is basically the thermal effect which the thermostat has been able to do and switch off the machine. Can I improve upon this figure? Yes. How? I can say that in winter I really don't need 24. Why? Because my walls have become cooler. I don't get heat radiating into my body due to radiation. I can perhaps work at 24, push 24 degree set points to 26 degrees. So in other words, what have I done? I have reset to suit off-peak conditions. Chennai, being an oceanic climate, my options to reset are very limited because the variation between winter and summer is not very large. But look at a place like Delhi, where in winter the temperatures go down to maybe even below freezing. At that point, the exercise of resetting inside temperatures is a very, very gainful exercise when it comes to energy saving. One can look at it very nicely, reset the points very, very well, and you have done a lot in effecting a personal economy from point of view of a reduced power bill, but a greater community good by not consuming that much of power. By not consuming that much of power, you have brought down the GRE, you have brought down the TEWI, you have reduced everything. You reduce the greenhouse gases, you reduce energy consumptions, you slowly move towards a phase where people are looking at, like you might say, God particle. We look at something like net zero. Now, with these two aspects, one would think that, look, I have done my best. But again, the most important point can always be an awareness to what is on the market. Today, as I said, starting with energy consumption far away, which you did not know, the manufacturer has started looking very, very keenly on the equipment he makes. Today, you can get compressors which are very good. 10 years back, a reciprocating compressor consuming 1 kilowatt per ton was the norm. It was supposed to be the best that one could look at. Today, you get equipment which are rotary. Rotary meaning you can have scroll, you can have vane, you can have screw, you can have centrifugal compressors which can give you energy levels of lower than 0.5 kilowatt per ton. That means you are 50% better off for equipment selected properly. So supposing you have been using equipment which was consuming 1 kilowatt per ton and you have an option to do this, never look down upon doing a small exercise, trying to find the money either from a banker or from your own resources to see that in short payback periods you can retire equipment which is consuming a little more energy than the datum. So in other words, keep watching the BEE norms, energy norms established by governmental authority, the established authorities to tell you this kind of kilowatt is what is really required, and correlate it with the type of air conditioning you are working with. You are working on an air conditioner which you work only for 4 hours on a summer afternoon, say about 4 months or 5 months in a year. A little bit of energy inefficiency does not matter because the equipment is being worked for a very, very small period. But on the other hand, the same air conditioner working in a 24/7 IT center, it's better to look at equipment which can save you every small drop of energy because its hours of operation are phenomenal. They operate nearly 8,000 hours in a year, as opposed to maybe a window air conditioner meant for a small bedroom which might operate for what? Hardly 4 into 100, say 400. So where is 8,000? Where is 400? So for that kind of hours of operation, do not hesitate to keep on examining the power cycles consumption with a magnifying glass. I think with that I have said what I have to say. You're welcome to look at very good literature which is available from ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating Refrigeration Engineers. It will be very nice to look at all the publications from TERI, which today has become a torchbearer for energy. I'm sure all of you have heard of the Energy Research Institute at Delhi, headed by Dr. R.K. Pachauri. His publications and his books definitely warrant a look, a relook and relook. Thank you very much.